What if I told you that at 65, 75, or even 85 years old, you haven't reached the end of your story, but perhaps its most meaningful chapter? What if the very question that haunts so many of us in our later years, what's the point anymore, is actually the doorway to discovering a purpose so profound that Viktor Frankl, the legendary psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, considered it the ultimate human achievement? Stay with me, because what you're about to discover will completely transform how you view aging, purpose, and the extraordinary potential that lies within your golden years. When Viktor Frankl was liberated from the Nazi concentration camps in 1945, he was a broken man who had lost everything: his parents, his wife, his life's work, and nearly his own life. Yet at the age of 40, he made a discovery that would revolutionize psychology and offer hope to millions. That meaning can be found in any circumstance, at any age, and that our capacity for purpose doesn't diminish with time. It actually deepens. But here's what most people don't understand about Frankl's teachings, especially as they apply to those of us over 65. Society whispers that our best years are behind us, that retirement means retreat, that aging equals irrelevance. Frankl would call this the greatest lie ever told to the human spirit. Let me share something that might surprise you. When Frankl developed his groundbreaking theory of logotherapy, the idea that our primary human drive is the search for meaning, he wasn't just theorizing, he was observing. And what he observed was that the people who maintained their sense of purpose, regardless of age or circumstance, were the ones who not only survived but thrived. Think about this for a moment. Right now, as you're watching this video, you're part of a generation that has witnessed more change, more history, more transformation than any generation before you. You've seen the world evolve from rotary phones to smartphones, from handwritten letters to instant global communication, from black and white television to virtual reality. You've accumulated decades of wisdom, experience, and insight that no younger person possesses, and yet society wants to convince you that your purpose has expired. Frankl would be outraged by this notion, and here's why. In his work with thousands of patients, he discovered 3 fundamental sources of meaning that actually become more accessible as we age, not less. Let me walk you through each one, and I want you to really listen, because this could change everything about how you approach your remaining years. The first source of meaning is what Frankl called creative values, the meaning we derive from what we give to the world. Now, before you say, "But I'm retired, I'm not creating anything anymore," stop right there. Frankl didn't limit creativity to career achievements or professional accomplishments. He meant any act of giving, contributing, or adding value to the world around you. At 65 and beyond, your creative values might look different than they did at 35, but they're potentially more powerful. Maybe you're mentoring a young person who's struggling with decisions you've already navigated. Maybe you're volunteering at a local charity, using skills you've refined over decades. Maybe you're writing down family stories for your grandchildren, preserving history that would otherwise be lost. Maybe you're teaching someone to cook your grandmother's recipe or showing a neighbor how to tend a garden. Each of these acts is what Frankl would call a creative value, a way of giving meaning to your existence by contributing something unique that only you can offer. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more life experience you have, the more valuable your creative contributions become. But Frankl didn't stop there. He identified a second source of meaning that becomes even more relevant as we age: experiential values. The meaning we derive from experiencing the world, from connecting with beauty, truth, love, and wonder. Here's where many people over 65 make a crucial mistake. They think that because they can't travel like they used to, or because their bodies don't move like they once did, their capacity for meaningful experiences has diminished. Frankl would say this is looking at life through the wrong lens entirely. Experiential values aren't about the magnitude of the experience. They're about the depth of your engagement with it. A sunset watched from your backyard can be as meaningful as one viewed from the top of Mount Everest, if you're truly present for it. A conversation with an old friend can be as profound as any lecture you might attend. A quiet moment of reflection can be as transformative as any adventure. And here's what younger people don't understand. Your capacity for deep experience actually increases with age. You've developed what Frankl called attitudinal wisdom, the ability to find meaning not just in what happens to you, but in how you choose to respond to what happens to you. This brings us to Frankl's third and perhaps most powerful source of meaning: attitudinal values, the meaning we derive from the stance we take toward unavoidable suffering, limitation, or challenge. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Great, so my purpose in old age is to suffer meaningfully. But that's not what Frankl meant at all. He meant that when we face challenges we cannot change, whether that's a health diagnosis, the loss of a spouse, physical limitations, or even just the reality of aging itself, we have the power to choose our attitude toward these challenges. And in that choice lies profound meaning. Frankl observed that some of the most meaningful lives he encountered were lived by people who had transformed their suffering into service, their limitations into wisdom, their losses into lessons for others. He called this the defiant power of the human spirit, our ability to transcend circumstances through the meanings we assign to them. At 65 and beyond, you've likely faced challenges that would have broken your younger self. But you're still here. You've developed resilience, perspective, and wisdom that only comes through lived experience. When you choose to face the challenges of aging with dignity, grace, and purpose, you're not just surviving, you're demonstrating something profound about human potential. But here's where Frankl's insights become truly revolutionary for people in their golden years. He discovered that the question, "What is the meaning of life?" is actually the wrong question. The right question is, "What is life asking of me right?" Now, this shift changes everything. Instead of looking backward and wondering if your life had meaning, or looking forward and wondering if there's any purpose left, you start looking at today and asking, "What is this moment, this day, this season of my life asking of me?" Maybe it's asking you to be a source of stability for your family during turbulent times. Maybe it's asking you to share your knowledge with someone who needs guidance. Maybe it's asking you to model graceful aging for the generations watching you. Maybe it's asking you to forgive someone you've held a grudge against for decades. Maybe it's asking you to finally pursue that creative project you've always put off. The beauty of this approach is that it makes every day potentially meaningful, regardless of your circumstances. You don't need to climb mountains or start companies or achieve great fame. You just need to listen to what life is asking of you right now and respond with intention. Frankl used to tell his patients about an elderly general practitioner who came to him devastated by depression after his wife's death. The doctor couldn't find any reason to continue living. Instead of trying to convince him why his life was worth living, Frankl asked him a simple question. What would have happened if you had died first and your wife had to live without you? The doctor immediately replied that it would have been terrible for her. She would have suffered terribly. Well then, Frankl said, she has been spared that suffering and it is you who must bear it, but you bear it for her sake. In that moment, the doctor's suffering was transformed from meaningless agony into a meaningful sacrifice. His continued life, even in grief, became an act of love for his deceased wife. This is the power of Frankl's approach to purpose in later life. It doesn't promise that aging will be easy or that all suffering can be avoided, but it offers something far more valuable, the assurance that meaning is always available, that purpose doesn't have an expiration date, and that your life continues to matter regardless of your age or circumstances. Now let me address the elephant in the room, the voice in your head that might be saying, "This all sounds nice, but what about when I'm really sick? What about when I can't take care of myself? What about when I'm facing death itself?" Frankl faced these very questions himself. In his later years, he dealt with heart problems, underwent surgery, and faced his own mortality with the same principles he had taught others. He discovered that even in the face of serious illness and approaching death, meaning was still possible. He wrote about patients who found profound purpose in how they faced their final illness, not just for themselves, but as a gift to their families, their caregivers, and everyone who witnessed their journey. He spoke of people who used their dying process to teach others about courage, acceptance, and love. He observed that some of the most meaningful moments of a person's entire life could occur in their final chapter. This doesn't mean we should romanticize suffering, or suggest that everyone should face illness or death with perfect grace. It means that even in our most vulnerable moments, we retain the fundamental human capacity to choose our attitude, and in that choice, we can find meaning. But let's not focus only on end-of-life scenarios. For most of you watching this video, you have years, perhaps decades, of life ahead of you. The question isn't whether you'll find meaning in dying, but whether you'll find meaning in living, really living, during this stage of your life. Frankl believed that one of the greatest tragedies of modern life was what he called existential vacuum, the emptiness that people feel when they lose their sense of purpose. He observed that this vacuum was particularly common in retirement, when people suddenly found themselves without the structure and identity that their careers had provided. But retirement, Frankl would argue, isn't the end of your purposeful life. It's potentially the beginning of your most purposeful life. Why? Because for perhaps the first time since childhood, you have the freedom to choose your purpose based purely on what matters most to you, not on what pays the bills or meets others' expectations. Think about it. At 65 and beyond, you've likely achieved a level of self-knowledge that your younger self could only dream of. You know what truly matters to you and what doesn't. You've learned to distinguish between urgent and important, between temporary and lasting, between impressive and meaningful. This wisdom, combined with the freedom that often comes with this stage of life, creates unprecedented opportunities for purposeful living. You can volunteer for causes you care about without worrying about how it will affect your career. You can pursue creative projects without concern for commercial success. You can invest in relationships without the distractions of climbing the corporate ladder. More importantly, you can approach these activities with a depth and intentionality that only comes with life experience. When a 30-year-old volunteers at a homeless shelter, they're learning about compassion. When a 70-year-old volunteers at the same shelter, they're often sharing a lifetime of accumulated wisdom about resilience, survival, and hope. Frankl also recognized that purpose in later life often involves what he called self-transcendence, moving beyond concern for our own needs and focusing on something larger than ourselves. This might be family, community, future generations, or causes we believe in. Here's something beautiful that happens as we age. Our perspective naturally expands. We start thinking less about the next promotion and more about the next generation. We care less about accumulating possessions and more about sharing wisdom. We focus less on impressing others and more on inspiring them. This shift towards self-transcendence isn't just psychologically healthy, it's deeply meaningful. When you mentor a young person, you're not just helping them. You're ensuring that your life experience continues to make a difference long after you're gone. When you volunteer for a cause you believe in, you're not just filling time. You're using your accumulated skills and wisdom to address problems that matter. When you share your stories with family members, you're not just reminiscing, you're preserving history and passing on values. When you model graceful aging, you're not just coping with getting older. You're showing others what's possible. But here's what I really want you to understand. Purpose in later life doesn't have to be grand or publicly recognized. Frankl emphasized that meaning is deeply personal and often invisible to others. Your purpose might be as simple as being the family member who remembers everyone's birthday, or the neighbor who always has time to listen, or the person who brings joy to others through your humor or kindness. The retired teacher who still corrects grammar in letters to the editor is living with purpose. The former engineer who now fixes things for neighbors is living with purpose. The grandmother who tells stories that make children laugh is living with purpose. The widower who tends his late wife's garden is living with purpose. None of these activities will make headlines, but each represents what Frankl called the will to meaning, the fundamental human drive to find significance in our existence, regardless of age or circumstance. Now, I want to address something that Frankl considered crucial, the role of responsibility in creating meaning. He often said that freedom without responsibility becomes meaningless, and this is particularly relevant for people in their later years. When you retire, when your children are grown, When many of your major life responsibilities have been fulfilled, it's easy to fall into a pattern of pure leisure. But Frankl observed that people who thrived in later life were those who found new responsibilities, not burdens, but meaningful commitments that gave structure and purpose to their days. This might mean taking responsibility for preserving family history, or for mentoring someone younger, or for contributing to a cause you care about, or simply for being a positive presence in your community. The key is that it's chosen responsibility. Responsibility you take on because it aligns with your values and contributes to something you find meaningful. Here's another crucial insight from Frankl that applies perfectly to later life: the importance of living in the present moment while maintaining hope for the future. He criticized both dwelling in the past and living only for some distant future goal. Instead, he advocated for what he called present moment meaning, finding purpose in what you're doing right now while maintaining a sense of direction for tomorrow. At 65 and beyond, this wisdom becomes particularly valuable. You have a rich past to draw upon for wisdom and perspective, but you don't need to live in it. You have a finite future ahead of you, but you don't need to be paralyzed by that reality. You have today, and today offers opportunities for meaning, connection, growth, and contribution. Frankl also recognized that meaning often comes through what he called encounters, meaningful connections with other people. As we age, our social circles may shrink, but the quality of our relationships often deepens. The friendships you maintain at 70 are likely based on genuine affection and shared history rather than convenience or professional networking. These deep connections become a source of profound meaning. The weekly coffee with an old friend, the phone call to check on a neighbor, the visit with a grandchild. These aren't just pleasant activities, they're meaningful encounters that enrich both your life and the lives of others. Moreover, Frankl believed that we often find our deepest purpose through our response to others' needs. At 65 and beyond, you've developed the emotional intelligence and life experience to truly understand and respond to human need in ways that younger people simply cannot. When you comfort someone who's going through a divorce, you're drawing on your own experience of navigating difficult relationships. When you counsel someone facing retirement, you're sharing wisdom gained through your own transition. When you support someone dealing with loss, you're offering the hard-earned understanding that only comes through facing your own losses. This experiential wisdom makes your contributions uniquely valuable. You're not just offering sympathy. You're offering empathy born of experience. You're not just giving advice, you're sharing tested wisdom. You're not just being helpful, you're fulfilling one of the highest human purposes, transforming your own experiences, including your suffering, into service to others. As we near the end of our time together today, I want to leave you with perhaps the most important insight from Viktor Frankl's work: the recognition that age brings not just physical changes, but psychological and spiritual opportunities that are unavailable at any other stage of life. The integration of a lifetime of experiences, the freedom from many earlier constraints, the clarity that comes with knowing your own mortality, the deep relationships that have been tested by time. These are not consolation prizes for getting older. They are unique gifts that can only be unwrapped in later life. Frankl would say that asking, "Is there any purpose in old age?" is like asking, "Is there any purpose in the final movement of a symphony?" The final movement doesn't repeat what came before. It builds on everything that preceded it to create something that could only exist at that point in the composition. Your later years aren't a postscript to your meaningful life. They're potentially the culmination of it. All the experiences you've had, all the wisdom you've gained, all the relationships you've built, all the skills you've developed, they're all available to you now in a way they never were before. The question isn't whether there's purpose in old age. The question is, what will you do with the unprecedented opportunity for meaning that this stage of life offers? How will you use the freedom, wisdom, and perspective you've earned through decades of living? Viktor Frankl lived to be 92 years old, and he remained purposeful and productive until the very end. He continued to write, teach, and contribute to the world because he understood something that our youth-obsessed culture has forgotten, that every stage of life offers unique opportunities for meaning, and that in many ways, the opportunities available in later life are the richest of all. So the next time someone suggests that your best years are behind you, or that retirement means irrelevance, or that aging equals obsolescence, remember Viktor Frankl's words: "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." You have that freedom right now, regardless of your age, regardless of your circumstances, regardless of what others might think about the value of older adults in society. You have the freedom to choose meaning, to choose purpose, to choose to live fully until your very last breath. If Viktor Frankl's insights about finding purpose in your golden years resonated with you today, I invite you to join our growing community here at Timeless Minds 65+. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss insights that can transform how you experience this incredible stage of life. Give this video a thumbs up if it helped shift your perspective on aging and purpose. Your engagement helps us reach other people who need to hear this message. And please, share this video with someone in your life who might be questioning their purpose in their later years. Sometimes the most meaningful thing we can do is help someone else discover that their story isn't over. It might just be reaching its most important chapter. Remember, at Timeless Minds 65+, we believe that wisdom, purpose, and meaning don't have expiration dates. Until next time, keep living with intention and never forget that your life continues to matter immensely.